Liam hadn't seen it coming. After a long day at work, he had barely stepped through the door when Sofia, his wife of 11 years, dropped a bombshell on him. She was waiting for him in the kitchen, still in her immaculate blazer and skirt from her marketing firm job, while he stood there in his flour-dusted bakery apron. She greeted him with 4 words every man dreads hearing. "We need to talk." His mind immediately went into a panic. "We need to talk" never leads to good things. Usually, it's a precursor to arguments, painful confessions, or worse. As he looked into Sofia's calm, unreadable face, Liam's thoughts began racing, flashing through possible reasons. Did he do something wrong? Was she unhappy with him? Did it have to do with the kids? It was only when she handed him a manila envelope that his pulse quickened and his heart started pounding. "Sofia, is this what I think it is?" he asked, his voice barely concealing his anxiety. She nodded, her voice soft but determined. "Yes, Liam, it's a divorce." The shock nearly took his breath away. He and Sofia had built a life together. They'd gone through ups and downs and had worked so hard to make their marriage a success. While he thought everything was going well, she was apparently preparing to leave him. His mind felt numb, and he fought to maintain composure as 1,000 emotions clashed inside him. Why?" he finally managed to ask, though his voice sounded hollow. "It's complicated," she replied, her gaze falling away from his. "Have you met someone else?" The words escaped him before he could think them over. He hardly recognized the calm in his own voice as he waited for her response. She took a moment, then nodded. Yes. He felt like he was suffocating. They'd been married for over a decade, but now it all seemed to be unraveling in an instant. His thoughts felt disjointed, unable to process the enormity of what was happening. His anger flared briefly, then sank back, leaving only an overwhelming numbness. "How long?" he asked, forcing himself to keep his tone steady. 6 months. The admission felt like a hammer to his chest, and he realized this had been happening under his nose while he thought they were still happy. He couldn't comprehend it. They had talked about having another child not even 2 weeks ago. How could it all fall apart so quickly? Sofia continued, "I never wanted to hurt you, Liam. I realized that I feel a stronger connection with him. I still care about you, but it's different. With him, it's something else." Her words, while gentle, felt like they were cutting through him. He asked to know who the man was, feeling that he deserved to know the person she had chosen over him. After a pause, she told him, "It's Daniel Myers." Liam felt his anger stir again, sharper this time. Daniel Myers, a wealthy and smug entrepreneur known for his flashy lifestyle and expensive cars. Liam had met him once at a community event and had immediately sensed his arrogance. Liam had even cautioned Sofia back then that Daniel was trouble, but she had only laughed it off. Now, as he sat across from her, he could see her lips tightening as she prepared to go through with her decision. He tried to keep his voice calm as he spoke. "All right, I understand. I won't contest the divorce, Sofia, but this doesn't mean I'll just walk away without protecting myself. You know my business and my personal finances are separate from our shared assets." Sofia agreed, stating she only wanted minimal alimony until she remarried and would give him time to move out. Despite the hurt, Liam appreciated that at least she wasn't trying to ruin him financially. He nodded, his mind now fully set on moving forward without her. By the end of their conversation, he was ready to leave. Liam packed a few bags, collected some essentials, and left his family home that evening, the weight of betrayal still sinking in. But as he drove away, he made a call to his friend and bakery manager, Emily. She was someone he trusted deeply, and he knew he'd need her support to navigate the difficult days ahead. "Emily, it's over," he said into the phone, his voice sounding flat. "She's divorcing me." Liam parked his car outside Emily's house and took a deep breath. It had been hours since he left his home, but his mind was still reeling from everything Sofia had revealed. As he walked to her door, he reminded himself to stay strong. Emily had been a friend long before she'd become his manager at the bakery, and he knew she'd offer him the support he needed. The door opened before he could knock. Emily, with her wavy auburn hair tied back and a concerned look in her bright green eyes, ushered him inside without a word. She was dressed casually, in jeans and a hoodie, looking more like the friend he'd known since college than the sharp manager she was at work. Without a word, she pulled him into a hug, and only then did he feel the weight of his emotions begin to settle. "It's over," he muttered into her shoulder. "Sofia wants a divorce. She's been seeing someone else." Emily pulled back, a mixture of disbelief and anger flashing across her face. "You've got to be kidding me. After all this time, she just decides to leave?" She shook her head, visibly upset on his behalf. Liam gave a small nod, sinking down onto her couch. "Yeah, and it's Daniel Myers. Can you believe that? The guy's a total, well, I told her he was trouble." Emily rolled her eyes, muttering something under her breath about rich guys who think they can take whatever they want. She sat down beside him, her expression softening. "Liam, I'm so sorry. I know how much you put into your marriage. And for her to do this, it's just cruel." They sat in silence for a few moments, and then, as if by instinct, Emily put on a movie to distract him. They watched without really paying attention, each lost in their thoughts. When the movie ended, she turned to him, her gaze steady. "You know," she said quietly, "you don't have to go through this alone. I've got a spare room, and you're welcome to stay here as long as you need." He looked at her, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. "Thanks, Em. Really. I'll get out of your hair soon, I promise. I just need a few days to figure things out." "Take all the time you need," she insisted, her voice firm. "And hey, if you need a distraction, there's always the bakery. We're in the middle of Valentine's prep, so it's all hands on deck." He chuckled, grateful for her attempt to lift his spirits. "Maybe I'll take you up on that. A little work might do me some good." The next few days passed in a blur. Between meeting his lawyer, sorting out the separation details with Sofia, and spending his free time at the bakery, Liam was able to keep his emotions mostly in check. Emily was an ever-present source of support, throwing herself into work and pushing the bakery team to meet Valentine's Day orders ahead of schedule. For a while, Liam felt a glimmer of normalcy return. But the night before Valentine's Day, everything changed. They had just closed up shop, and the entire team was celebrating a record-breaking day. Emily had organized a small get-together in the bakery's back office with pizza and drinks. As they laughed and chatted, Liam felt a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. It was in those moments he realized how much he valued the loyalty and camaraderie of his team. And, above all, Emily. After everyone left, Emily stayed behind to help him clean up. They were joking about the mishaps they'd dealt with that day. Orders being mixed up, a cake almost falling off a table, when, out of nowhere, she said, "Liam, you know I'll always be here for you, right?" He paused, caught off guard by the seriousness in her tone. "Yeah, Em, I know. You've already done so much for me." She hesitated, looking down at the stack of plates she was holding. "It's just, I hate seeing you like this. You deserve better than what Sofia did to you." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, as if in a trance, he reached out and took her hand. She looked up, surprised, and in that instant, he felt something shift between them. Without thinking, he leaned in and kissed her. It was brief, almost tentative, but it was enough to make his heart race. When he pulled back, he saw the surprise in her eyes, quickly replaced by a warmth that took his breath away. "Liam," she began, her voice barely a whisper. He shook his head, managing a small smile. "I'm sorry. I don't know. I've been so wrapped up in my own mess, and I never realized how much you mean to me." She smiled back, squeezing his hand. "It's okay. I'm here for you, whatever you need. And, Liam, I care about you. A lot." As they stood there, he felt a spark of hope begin to rekindle inside him. For the first time since Sofia had left, he felt like he could move forward. And maybe, just maybe, Emily was the person who could help him do it. Over the following weeks, Liam found himself gradually adjusting to a new rhythm in life. Staying at Emily's place felt more like home than he had expected. Their days were busy with work, and most evenings ended with the two of them watching TV or talking late into the night. Bit by bit, the pain Sofia had left him with was replaced by a quiet sense of contentment and, surprisingly, anticipation. One Saturday, after an unusually busy morning at the bakery, they decided to take a break. Emily had suggested a short road trip to a nearby town, famous for its coastal views and farmers markets. They spent the afternoon wandering through vendor stalls, sampling homemade chocolates, and laughing at each other's attempts to outdo the other in finding unique ingredients for new bakery recipes. As they walked along the cliffside trail overlooking the ocean, Liam felt a calm he hadn't known he needed. Emily walked beside him, her laughter and warmth filling the space that had once been a dark void. He glanced at her, feeling his pulse quicken. "Emily," he began, hesitating. "Thank you for everything. I don't know how I'd have gotten through all this without you." She gave him a gentle smile, her eyes reflecting the ocean's shimmering blues. "Liam, you don't have to thank me. That's what friends are for. Or whatever it is that we are now," she added, blushing slightly. He laughed, feeling lighter than he had in a long time. "Well, whatever we are, I know one thing. I don't want to lose you." She looked up at him, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Then, impulsively, she took his hand, and they continued walking, hand in hand, the gentle breeze carrying away their unspoken thoughts. The weeks flew by, and soon, they were approaching what would have been Liam and Sofia's wedding anniversary. Despite all that had happened, Liam found his mind drifting back to Sofia and Daniel. He'd heard through mutual friends that Sofia and Daniel were engaged and that they were planning a grand wedding. He had to admit, there was a part of him that stung at how easily Sofia seemed to have moved on. Emily noticed the shift in his mood. One night, as they were closing up the bakery, she placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You know, if you're still hurting, it's okay," she said softly. "No one expects you to just forget all the years you spent with her." Liam sighed, looking down at the countertop. "It's not that I miss her," he admitted, struggling to put his feelings into words. "It's more that it feels like she threw it all away so easily. Like those years meant nothing." Emily nodded, her face thoughtful. "Then maybe it's time for some closure. You know, something to remind you that you're better off without her." He raised an eyebrow. "Closure?" She shrugged, her lips curling into a mischievous smile. "Or revenge, depending on how you look at it." Liam couldn't help but laugh. "Revenge, huh? Well, I'm listening." With a twinkle in her eye, Emily leaned in and began whispering her plan. The idea was lighthearted, almost playful, but the more she spoke, the more Liam found himself warming to it. They would attend Sofia and Daniel's wedding reception. With his bakery's reputation in town, they'd likely receive an invitation anyway, and even if they didn't, Emily could pull a few strings to ensure they were there. As they hashed out the details over the next few days, the plan began to take on a life of its own. Liam's initial reservations melted away, replaced by a kind of excited anticipation. He knew he wasn't really the type for petty revenge, but the thought of adding a memorable twist to Sofia's perfect day was too tempting to resist. Emily was thrilled, diving into every detail of their scheme with a level of enthusiasm that made Liam laugh. Together, they plotted out every step. She suggested a few harmless but humorous pranks, some subtle hints that would play with Sofia and Daniel's nerves without crossing any real lines. Finally, the day of the wedding arrived. Liam and Emily spent the morning at the bakery, ensuring everything was in order for their brief absence. They dressed in their best, Liam in a sharp black suit and Emily in a stunning emerald green dress that hugged her figure perfectly. When she emerged from her room, Liam's breath caught. She looked radiant, her smile shy yet confident. "Wow, Emily," he murmured, unable to hide his admiration. "You look incredible." She blushed, giving him a playful nudge. "Don't get too used to it. This is a one-time thing." They drove to the wedding in silence, each of them lost in thought. As they pulled into the parking lot, Liam felt a mix of emotions rise within him. But when Emily slipped her hand into his, giving him a reassuring squeeze, he felt a surge of courage. "Let's make this a day to remember," she said with a wink. They entered the grand reception hall, blending into the crowd of Sofia and Daniel's elite guests. With Emily by his side, Liam moved through the room, smiling politely and nodding at familiar faces. He caught glimpses of Sofia and Daniel, both dressed to the nines and reveling in the attention from their well-heeled friends. Soon, It was time for their planned additions to start unfolding. As Liam and Emily settled at a table near the center of the hall, they exchanged a quick, conspiratorial smile. And with that, the first act of their playful revenge was set in motion. Liam and Emily exchanged glances as the lights dimmed, signaling the beginning of Sofia and Daniel's grand wedding reception. Sofia, stunning in a white gown adorned with intricate lace, was basking in the glow of attention as she moved gracefully among her guests. Daniel, dressed in a sharp, tailored tuxedo, looked every bit the part of the wealthy entrepreneur, his smug expression only adding to Liam's resolve. As the evening progressed, the guests were guided toward the banquet tables. Liam and Emily took their seats, hidden in plain sight but strategically close enough to witness every part of the event. They exchanged a quick nod. The time had come to set their plan into motion. Emily had managed to gather some inside information about the catering setup, including access to the kitchen area where the wedding cake was being assembled. With a little help from her industry contacts, she had arranged a minor, yet amusing, substitution. The once luscious chocolate layer of the cake had been replaced with a special blend of ingredients, carefully crafted to have a rather memorable effect on its consumers. The trick wasn't malicious. It wouldn't make anyone ill, but it would guarantee some amusing consequences. Meanwhile, Liam couldn't resist a second touch of humor, whispering to one of the waitstaff to serve the groom a drink with a particularly bitter twist. It was just enough to disrupt Daniel's usual smug smile and cause him to wrinkle his nose, something that earned a few stifled laughs from nearby guests. The night wore on, and the moment of truth arrived. Sofia and Daniel were ushered toward the cake for the ceremonial cutting. The crowd cheered as they posed for photos, knives in hand, ready to slice through the layers of rich frosting and the special chocolate filling within. As the first piece was cut, they took turns feeding each other, the laughter from their guests filling the air. Liam and Emily exchanged another grin, bracing for the show. Within minutes, the effects of their special ingredient began to show. Sofia's face turned a light shade of green, while Daniel appeared to be fighting an uncomfortable urge to shift in his seat. Liam leaned back, stifling a chuckle as he noticed several other guests who had sampled the cake beginning to squirm uncomfortably. It started subtly, a quiet cough, a clearing of throats, and a few nervous glances exchanged among the guests. But it wasn't long before the true hilarity ensued. Sofia, suddenly pale, was forced to excuse herself, dashing toward the restroom with Daniel awkwardly trailing behind. One by one, guests realized the same and began making hasty exits from the dining hall. From their vantage point, Liam and Emily could hardly contain their laughter. The grand celebration had devolved into a quiet exodus toward the restrooms, and the once perfect atmosphere was now filled with murmurs of confusion and embarrassment. Emily's eyes sparkled with satisfaction as she turned to Liam. "Well," she whispered, a grin on her face, "that was even better than I imagined." Liam nodded, unable to keep from laughing. "Mission accomplished," he said, the satisfaction of their harmless prank filling him with a lightheartedness he hadn't felt in months. As they made their way out of the reception hall, they could still hear the echoes of confusion and discomfort behind them. The grand wedding that Sofia and Daniel had envisioned would no doubt be remembered by everyone there, albeit for reasons far removed from their intended elegance. When they reached the car, Emily collapsed into laughter. "Did you see her face when she ran off? I think we'll be remembered as the mystery guest who transformed the wedding of the year." Liam laughed, feeling the weight of his broken marriage finally lift. "It's the best gift I could ask for," he said, turning to Emily with genuine gratitude. "And you're the mastermind behind it all." They drove back to Emily's place, still laughing, recounting every detail of the night. When they finally got home, the laughter subsided, replaced by a quiet sense of accomplishment. Liam glanced over at Emily, realizing how deeply he cared for her and how she had been there through everything. She caught his gaze, her eyes warm and understanding. "Thanks for everything, Emily," he said softly. "I really don't know where I'd be right now if it weren't for you." She reached out, placing a comforting hand on his. "Anytime, Liam. You know that." Without another word, he leaned in and kissed her again, this time with all the warmth and gratitude he felt. She returned the kiss, her hand resting gently on his cheek. In that moment, they both realized that something deeper had grown between them, a connection that neither of them had anticipated. In the months that followed, Liam and Emily's relationship continued to blossom, both at work and beyond. Their friends and colleagues at the bakery quickly noticed the change between them and, to their delight, supported the budding romance. With Emily by his side, Liam found a renewed passion for his work and a newfound sense of purpose. As for Sofia and Daniel, news of the disastrous wedding spread through their social circles. The tale of the cake incident became something of a legend, with various embellished versions cropping up in conversations throughout the city. Liam occasionally overheard snippets about it at the bakery from customers, and each time, he and Emily would exchange a secret smile. It wasn't long before Liam heard through mutual acquaintances that things weren't going smoothly in Sofia and Daniel's relationship. Daniel had been caught in a compromising situation with another woman just a few months after the wedding. Liam couldn't help but feel a certain satisfaction at the irony. Sofia, who had left him in pursuit of what she thought was a better life, was now facing the same heartbreak she'd caused. One chilly evening, just as Liam was about to close up the bakery, he heard a knock on the door. To his surprise, there stood Sofia, looking worn and anxious. She hesitated before stepping inside, clutching her coat tightly around her shoulders. "Liam," she started, her voice barely above a whisper. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I made a mistake. A huge one." He looked at her, feeling a mixture of pity and relief that he no longer felt any trace of longing for her. Time, and Emily's unwavering support, had healed the wounds Sofia had left. "It's fine, Sofia," he replied evenly. "We've both moved on." Sofia's eyes darted around the bakery, lingering on the cozy atmosphere and the smell of freshly baked bread. I wish things had turned out differently," she said, her voice faltering. At that moment, Emily stepped out from the back room, a warm smile on her face. She didn't seem surprised to see Sofia. Instead, she walked over to Liam and gently slipped her arm through his. Sofia's expression shifted, realizing how much Liam had moved forward. "I'm glad you came by, Sofia," Liam said, his voice kind but firm. "But we've all made our choices, and I think it's best if we stick with them." Sofia nodded, seeming to understand that there would be no second chances. She gave a small, sad smile before turning and walking out into the evening, her silhouette vanishing down the street. Emily squeezed Liam's hand, looking up at him with a smile that held both warmth and pride. "You okay?" she asked softly. He nodded, his heart feeling lighter than it had in years. "Better than ever," he replied, pulling her close. With Sofia behind him and a promising future ahead, Liam finally felt ready to let go of the past. He had Emily, his bakery, and a life he was excited to live. A life shaped by resilience, kindness, and a sense of humor that had turned even his darkest days into moments of growth. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories on the channel.